energy. America bursts with it. A whole new and exotic recreational world is opening up on the edges of our cities. Recreations of the ancient past, celebrations attracting millions, a craving for new places and new experiences. A surge of energy concentrated in one of the nation's newest and most fragile resources, our regional parks.
A regional park is located between towns or on a town's fringe. Characteristically, it's larger and less developed than a city park. The grass is not ordinarily mown lawn, but the natural cover. The animals are not caged or domesticated, but wild. These parks, often linked by foot or bicycle or bridle paths, preserve natural environments, biomes, ecosystems on the one hand, and human history on the other.
At Coyote Hills Regional Park near San Francisco Bay, there's a new kind of recreation. People are combining history with boat building. Naturalist Norm Kidder.
It's an extremely mellow, relaxing, it's almost an out-of-body, world experience. For me, it's like escaping from all the pressures of the 20th century. This one requires so much hand labor that it took probably 250 people were able to get involved in the construction of this boat, plus then the others who would just be able to view it. But it gave a whole lot of people a chance to actually touch it and experience it out.
The beginning of an Ohlone Indian tule raft. The reeds are split to make 1,400 feet of tule cordage. Volunteers will be rewarded with a voyage and also have the pleasure of reviving an ancient lost skill. Tule reeds, the basic material for the raft. Nothing more than flower stalks to be reinforced with willow branches. Out of the common work of many hands will come a product of human ingenuity and a glimpse into an older and simpler life.
People can often go and view historical things. They can go to a museum and see historical things. They can go and look at a ship sailing in, but there's very few opportunities for people to get to help recreate history.
The Tule marshes around San Francisco Bay were once home to the Ohlone Indians. Like other tribes, they were driven from their homes and hunted out. Of their hunter-gatherer civilization, only scraps and remnants remain. Hard objects such as this bone whistle have survived. Of more fragile artifacts, such as the tule rafts, we have only descriptions, and few of those. With so little information to go on, the modern boat builders had a fear that the reed craft might become water-soaked and sink. Even project designer Jan Southworth wondered if it could survive the turbulent bay.
One Indian informant to anthropologist John Harrington mentioned that if you left a boat in the water 5 or 6 days, it would become useless. I had a great deal of apprehension about a 9-day voyage covering 83 miles, and I felt, and I had prepped all of our participants for the possibility that we might have to stop the voyage because of the waterlogging problem.
A successful launching, and one of the most widely used of ancient vessels, again found its home on the bay.
When we were out far enough into the bay or into the delta with the environment around us in a natural situation, we were able to actually kind of get an idea of what it must have felt like to be out here 1,000 years ago.
Each day, a different crew took the raft on its voyage. For some, there was the thrill of accomplishment, of having made by hand of natural materials something that worked. For others, there was a deeper pleasure, a discovery of roots half forgotten. Kathy Martinez.
I am a Native American, and I know that the Thule boats were made by a number of California tribes. And I felt like I really wanted to know what it was like. It was something that I really wanted to do because I've never done it before, and then I thought it had an element of adventure in it.
It's a whole different reality. You're out there with the bay, your own knowledge of things. You know, you're having to sometimes battle against the elements, sometimes you're just flowing with the elements. With the Thule boat, half the boat's underwater. The water sometimes rises up through your boat or it washes over the top. It actually connects you to the water. It forms a link with the water as opposed to a barrier against the water.
Out of the voyage came a renewed respect for Ohloni's skill. The Thule boat was not only seaworthy, it was practically unsinkable.
It was unique in modern day life, and it was an adventure. There was something that we did learn from this kind of experimental archaeology that isn't written about, and it was not, there was no evidence that we could find about it in the documents. The boat resisted waterlogging beautifully, and it was riding high, and we were riding dry.
A meeting of old and new, and somehow a fulfillment.
A lot of us need an adventure, and especially an adventure that connects you with the environment more than everyday life does.
The wild edges of our cities provide space not only for Thule boat journeys. Water sports, endurance sports, 76% of all Americans regularly take to the outdoors. We seek things the asphalt jungles cannot provide.
For several reasons: size, linkage, greater wildness, more natural and historical preservation, regional parks have been developed as an answer to a human need. They provide more things to do, more room to do them in, than any city park can provide. And in the age of the automobile, they're accessible to millions.
Dade County, Florida, a boom park system in a boom area, and a leading park in recreational programs. 400 recreational sites with visitors numbering into the tens of millions each year. Near Detroit, it's all-year sports. Metro Parks serves 5 counties, with some individual parks over 4,000 acres in size. San Francisco is unmatched by any other major city in outdoor opportunity. With 15% of the region in parklands, it could serve as a model for other areas.
The San Francisco Bay region looks both outward and inward. From the Golden Gate, it looks across the Pacific Basin to Asia. Eastward, it remembers the whole breadth and history of North America. But the hills that enclose this most splendid natural harbor and its metropolitan concentration of 5 million people are protective, too. They give the Bay Area its feel of wholeness and self-definition.
Across the bay from San Francisco are 44 parks comprising 60,000 acres. They're all run by the East Bay Regional Park District. It's an area that's always been popular with weekend hikers and picnickers. Things were different in the old days. Going to the hills was an all-day excursion. Up to about World War II, the electric railway took you to the wild edge. There you might picnic or walk, searching for views or wildflowers. Those slower-paced days are gone, except in nostalgic memory. We'd recreate them if we could, but somehow they elude us. Ours is a world of high-speed motion, not of contemplation. Speed is an addiction for which there is no methadone. Repose is as out of fashion as button shoes. Millions of visitors swarm through the East Bay regional parks every year. Though people need more space, space grows scarcer and more expensive. Richard Trudeau, general manager of the East Bay Park District, has somehow managed to increase the district's acreage fourfold. But the problems grow as fast as the solutions.
Leisure and recreation are growing, and that's reflected in not only national and state trends, but as what's happened locally. We have this year a visitation level of about 16 million people.
Triathlon. Swimming, biking, and running. It's a premier endurance sport. Beginning in 1978, with 15 people, events like this now attract over 100,000 participants nationwide.
We've seen a tremendous growth of jogging, hiking. The triathlons are one illustration, the various kinds of races that we have in the parks, and people jogging and running and walking. Used to be that the parks were empty in the winter months. Now, any month, any week, even in the rain, you'll find people out jogging, running, utilizing the parks because it's good for their health. During the 17 years I've been general manager of the Park District, there's been a growing trend away from the more passive types of recreation into the more active types.
Walk ahead.
It's not only the test of endurance that draws people to regional parks. Amy Rennert, editor of Women's Sports magazine, has an overall view of what is happening in American recreation. For her, parks are places for special discoveries.
I think perhaps women are more connected to nature than men are, and hence the intensity of the experience in the urban parks might mean more for us than it does for men. Urban parks can provide women with the place for this sense of discovery, for this sense of joy, and for the sense of strength that come from being in the parks, that come from getting away and really finding the stillness and peace in the parks, and yet being able to pursue running or walking or biking or hiking or swimming, anything. I think the role of urban parks for women is absolutely crucial because it gives us access, and it gives all of us access, not just women who have the kind of money that it takes to join a racquetball club. It really seems to me that for whatever reason a woman gets into sports, whether it's to just lose 5 pounds and look a little bit better, or to play softball with a group of women friends, it doesn't really matter, because what's most important is that transformation that takes place within as a result of getting involved in sports. And I think that's where there's a bond formed between all women doing sports. I think in almost every sport, whether it's biking or running or volleyball or basketball, there are women who we can look up to and women who we can aspire to be more like. I think that world-class athletes like Cindy Olivari provide the rest of us with role models.
Cindy Olivari, United States national cycling champion.
Get this big thrill from watching Cindy Olivari. It just makes me want to jump on a bicycle.
She's been described as a competitor with a lioness caged inside. There's a sense of total commitment about her.
I enjoy most getting out and riding, and the feeling and the exhilaration of just handling my bike well, reaching high speeds, feeling the breeze through my hair. It's thrilling, winning a race, ignoring everything else. The hardest part for me is getting over the opinions of other people and not letting that affect me, and just doing it because I love it and not worrying about what other people think.
Working on both speed and endurance, she finds the regional parks a favorite training ground, offering every sort of grade and road condition.
The terrain here is ideal for anything you want to do, not just for being a bike racer, but in my case, We have hills to train in, we have flat areas to train in. There's Mount Diablo, Tilden Park, Wildcat Canyon. It's incredible. I think there's tremendous value in the individual going out and riding for physical fitness, for general health and mental well-being.
For Cindy Oliveri and other athletes, as well as thousands of weekend exercisers, regional parks provide a theater for self-improvement. It's as if modern America were giving birth to a new recreational personality with an accent on the individual.
A big part of what I get out of bicycling is the opportunity to challenge myself and just reach down and actually do the very best I can at something, to try to reach my limits, and I haven't yet.
The annual Bathtub Regatta. The crowds confirm that regional parks are more than places for self-testing. There's a social side, too, an invitation to let go. Too often, cities isolate us, but regional parks, peripheral villages, can become places for the warm contacts we like and need. Regional park celebrations take us back to nature and place us in a different world.
Good job.
There, good. Ready now. La batea, es casualidad, se menea, qué felicidad. La batea, qué casualidad, se menea, qué felicidad.
Put nature, people, and music together, and you've created a powerful joining force. So thinks jazz leader Paul Winter.
I think musical celebrations in parks can give people back themselves, bring them back to an experience of their own true nature.
From his home in rural Connecticut, saxophonist Paul Winter travels to parks and wild areas nationwide.
Music is vibrations interweaving, and so is life, all the forms of life on Mother Earth. Physically, you are vibrating when you are creating sound. It's just a vibratory mirror of the natural world.
Winter's jazz filled the halls of the White House during President Kennedy's term of office. Since then, he has developed a musical style responsive to the sounds and movements of nature. Music outdoors, subdued and direct. No easy task in an age of super amplification. For Winter, it has a special meaning in a fragmented world.
Music has a great joining ability. Live music can be a magnet to kind of draw people back together again. Music enables them to be in this place in nature with a reflective and a meditative and an emotional experience. Celebration is reconnecting. It can be very powerful. The earth is a continual reminder of where we've come from and where we might go, of another way that we might do this life and be here with each other and be with the environment.
One of the most important things for people cooped up in cities is for there to be a safety valve, and that's what a park is, so that if they want quiet, serenity, privacy, if they want to listen to birds, do things of that kind, that there's a place to do it close by.
Stuart Udall, Secretary of the Interior during the Kennedy and Johnson administrations, is committed to the park ideal. He had a major role in planning the large East Bay Park District.
Spaciousness, to me, is what the United States is all about.
He has guided himself by the ideal of wide public use without impairment of the resource.
A regional park ought to offer opportunities for all kinds of outdoor experiences. And that means you're not just preserving one kind of area. You want to have all of them, the whole gamut of what nature offers available to the people.
Making parks available to everyone takes vision, and it takes money. It also takes the greatest administrative skill to make sure the public doesn't destroy what it wants to enjoy. Even so, total public access is Udall's goal.
People who live in an area surrounded by mountains or with beautiful valleys or stream valleys, they should have access to those places. The great thing about East Bay is that you have a mountain chain there of low mountains, and the park system essentially claims the mountains as belonging to all of the people. And we did the master plan for them. We were trying to be sure that there were places close by for every community. That was part of the planning process.
But access has turned out to be one of the most urgent problems facing America's regional parks. Unless they meet the needs of densely populated core city areas, the parks fail their greatest obligation.
When you're living in cramped quarters, sometimes you tend to resent people. You develop a survival-oriented mentality. I think it's really important just to have a chance to get back to nature and not to be so crowded, so caught up in the complexities of everyday life that you can't just relax.
Elihu Harris is a California state assemblyman who serves a core city population in the East Bay. His constituents are not only more deprived of outdoor recreational space than most Americans, but they also find it harder to reach parks on the urban edge. Play space for children in his district is often a parking lot or paved school courtyard. He feels a pressing need for his constituents to have more and better places.
I think the real thing that people in my district need parks for is simply for escape. They need a chance that they can be in an open area without the tension, without the telephones, without all the people crowded in around them. I think they want to be in a situation where they don't have to compete for space. And we need that. In a densely populated area, people simply need open space where they can recreate, where they can enjoy themselves, where they can do their own thing. That's important, and we should never diminish that importance. The area that I represent is a microcosm of the state and the nation. It's diverse in terms of ethnicity, it's minorities, it's a lot of people who are poor, a lot of people who are rich. I think the real question and the real thing that we have to look at anytime we're talking about urban parks is how are people going to get to them? If you don't have private transportation, then a lot of senior citizens, a lot of handicapped people, a lot of people on fixed incomes, quite frankly, can't get to parks unless there's public transportation available. If they're rural parks so that they're hundreds of miles away or even 20 or 30 miles away and people can't get to them, then they become irrelevant. They become simply open space. Open space without access for people, I think, is irrelevant.
In the inner city, the need for light, space, and air is a hunger and a privation. Terry Ramirez works with children and their parents at a school near the Bay Area's noisiest freeways.
I've been here in this community for 30 years. And I wasn't even aware that we had so many, and actually regional parks, I mean. Sometimes in the beginning when I moved here from Mexico, when I would look at regional parks with a little sign and everything, I thought it was some kind of government deal that we weren't allowed to trespass.
It can be a long way from a downtown school to the freedom at the city's edge.
Most of the time we have families that have, let's say, 7, 10, maybe even 11 children, and sometimes they don't have a car, and sometimes probably not even money for the gas.
But recently, Terry Ramirez kids have visited parks they hadn't known existed. This opportunity is due to the East Bay Regional Park's low-cost busing program. For families here, it's been a passport to a larger and richer world.
With the busing program that the Regional Parks has offered, people have really, they didn't know that park. They were acquainted with the park. They found out that it was there. More than anything, the location. They never even realized it existed. You go to a regional park and it's beautiful. It's outdoors, but it's just all in the wilderness, you know, and it just looks like a whole new different world. When I really feel sad, or when I really feel like I need peace and quiet, I think that's my best place to go, to a nice part of the park where it's so beautiful. You look around, you see all this beauty in just one spot of the earth. So calm, so full of life. It's just for me to be here and enjoy. It's mine.
Climbing, I'd be coming up.
China Gallant,
It's a lot easier. Just lower yourself from the road.
author, wilderness trip leader, member of all-women river expeditions. Belayed by Darla Stevens, she practices climbing within sight of San Francisco Bay. Her personal quest for a new self-reliance and courage led her to regional parks. She's an advocate of outdoor experiences which damage nothing and ask for nothing but space, rock, and sky.
There's a tremendous trust going on there with another person, because if I slipped or fell, my body was in that other person's hand, whether or not I would fall, a foot or so and just get scraped up, or whether or not I could fall to the bottom and break my neck. What I was thinking of as I was coming up the rock was how the rock was giving me, almost speaking to me. It was like saying, here, you can put your hand here, put your foot here. And I felt like the rock was a friend of mine, inviting me to move up.
But increasingly, there are other more frantic and noisy pursuits in regional parks.
Gee, another one.
Okay.
For China, the issue centers on whether these wild places should be temples or resorts.
Part of what I think is essential about the experience of being in a park, in a wild place, is the non-human element, is contacting something other than just other human beings. And I think what we need so desperately, and what people are seeking often, is some kind of serenity and some kind of peace. I think that a lot of people equate frantic activity and noise with recreation. There may even be a sort of thrust or attempt to turn some of our parks into amusement parks.
Water slides can be a park's fastest growing activity, but this worries China.
For us to take our common public land, turn it over to a concessionaire to create what essentially in this country is really an amusement park function is not appropriate use of parkland, which belongs to everyone.
I think the general acceptance is that we've had over 400,000 riders in the last 4 years, and I think that speaks for itself. The public likes it. With the expansion of the park and not have only just one ride, but maybe 5 or 6 rides, we feel we can handle 6, 7, or 8,000 in this area and handle it very, very well without any problem whatsoever.
Glenn Kierstedt's water slide concession is in an East Bay Regional Park. Many people enjoy it. It may cost too much for Terry Ramirez's kids, but it creates income for the park district. For the East Bay Parks, it's a step in the direction of Dade County, Florida, where concessions are prominent features. The problem is that water slides alone lose their attraction. You have to expand continually.
We feel that there's a definite lack of facilities right here for the children. We'd like to add a small soft slide. We'd like to add a large wading pond and some raindrops. We'd also like to add an inner tube ride and a raging waters ride and a rampage ride out here. I think the water slide as a single entity within a park is a dinosaur type item. It's going to eventually die out without the other attractions to go along with it. I think there's a place for the private enterprise within the park district system and the park district to operate as a family and to both be successful.
In this culture, we rarely teach our children to sit still, to be quiet, to observe. If we could take children into the regional parks, which we have the opportunity to do when they're this close to the city, I think it would be important to teach them to learn to sit still. Then there wouldn't be such a need for frenetic motion. We don't know how to be in the society that we're in, I think, as people, because the speed is too fast.
Speed or not, a large regional park district like that in Dade County, Florida, tries to serve a population that wants every sort of entertainment. With enough zoos and other attractions, a park system can cover as much as half of its operating budget. It's a temptation in states where recreation funds have declined as much as 30% in the past few years. In the East Bay parks overlooking San Francisco, the pace has been slower. People seem to want parks for simple human activities, for reacquaintance with birds and grass. Play sites and trails are the park's strong points. Even with tax funds declining, the park district has so far resisted the path of Dade County. So far. Park General Manager Richard Trudeau.
There's a necessity to have concessionaires operating some of the facilities, some of the recreational facilities and the food kind of operations, which they can do better and cheaper than we can do. To enhance and augment, however, the tax funds, we're doing more with user fees, more with the concessionaires than we did previously, tightening them up, making sure that we have better contracts than we had previously. And we're looking to the private sector to do more for us. Economic necessities for the parks will not create Disneylands because that is not the regional park district's role. We believe in having natural history or living history in parks such as our farm park at Ardenwood, our mining park at Black Diamond.
For all the pressure on them to become Disneylands, the parks in the East Bay system clearly have other options. History, for instance, quiet and cool, a relief from the overheated present.
The world wasn't made on the day we became aware of it, neither was America. Historical relics, many of them melancholy with spoiled hope, some of them pregnant with the future, which is our present, help to remind us of the rich human tradition that any inhabited place inevitably develops. They tell us not only about themselves, but about ourselves.
There's a stillness at Black Diamond Mines Regional Preserve. The park sits in a coal field where once thousands of miners worked. Former resident Jack Lauter.
We were ranchers as well as miners, so my dad rode his horse to the mines. And when he got there, he needed a place to keep the horse all day, so he built this cabin as a stable.
Jack and other former residents spend hours with park naturalists tape recording memories of a vanishing era. Coal and minerals from such forgotten areas as this fueled the beginnings of the technological age.
As I came up this canyon, this place didn't change. You could view your own childhood once again. I mean, these were the same hills you ran up and down, and here it was, all just like you left it.
This quiet land hides a secret. In the late 1800s, 5 mining towns hugged the hills. Underneath the earth, there are over 100 miles of tunnels, which yielded nearly 4 million tons of coal by the turn of the century. The settlements disappeared as quickly as they came.
There was no cash in any of the houses, not very little money. All during the month, the miners' wives went down to the company store and charged their groceries. Sometimes it took 2 or 3 paychecks, meaning my uncles or my grandfather, to pay off the store bill. There was a companionship that we don't have now. No one was ever lonesome in those days. Now we're lonesome in the middle of cities, in the middle of towns, and so on.
It's Jack's feeling for the quality of everyday life that the naturalists are trying to capture as they recreate the story of Black Diamond mines. Living the history she teaches, naturalist Bev Ortiz walks listeners into the past.
Some men would think of doing nothing else but being a miner. They are proud of their work. They do not care about their dangers because they know that what they are doing is a contribution. What they are doing is so important.
Taking the role of a teacher in the mining community, she speaks only words based on true accounts.
David was doing his job
History,
that day
nature, not only an older world, but a wilder one lies within reach of our cities.
One more thing, how many toes does she have on her front feet?
4.
4, okay. How many toes does she have on her back feet?
4, 5.
A newt, however many toes she has, is a miracle. Camouflage, courtship dances, territoriality, migrations, every aspect of wild animal life is interesting. And for a city child, it may be the match that lights a mind. Animals from an ancient order, a way of existing we can barely comprehend.
She's called a king snake because along with eating rats and mice and gophers and moles and lizards, she'll also eat other snakes, even a rattlesnake, a predator.
Unfortunately, snakes and ghost towns bring in no money. Facing slow financial starvation, parks nationwide turn to every available funding source, often concessions, occasionally the leasing of farm or grazing land. It's roundup time at Morgan Territory Regional Land Preserve. The area is one of the East Bay Park's larger holdings. It accounts for a portion of the district's world-famous 500 miles of roads and trails. But the entire park is also leased by Fritz Allen for a cattle grazing operation.
So that's but that's the way we're going to take out, because once we get them towards the top, one man should be able to pretty much just keep them.
It may be only 20 miles from San Francisco, but Fritz's dream has an Old West horse opera shine to it.
That's what Sherman's got. At one time, I just thought that it was just a boyhood ambition. You know, probably like a lifelong dream or something. But then I began to do a little research into my family background, and I found out my grandfather's great-grandfather was a cattleman down in Louisiana. And my uncles, as well as my grandfather, they've always been somewhat around beef cattle. So I think it may be a little niche of it in the blood somewhere.
A grazing lease in a public park is a touchy matter. The land must be shared with park users, but the district runs the risk of the parks becoming a private ranch.
When you deal with the beef industry in particular, a great percentage of the beef in this country is grown on public lands. Being out here, you don't necessarily turn conservative, but you realize the virtues of work, hard work.
It's hard work, and sometimes hard on the land. The district's role is to monitor the environmental impact of grazing. The rancher's job is to survive financially.
I think that although the government may provide, some services, much of the hard work is still, and again, some of the other forms of investment is still pretty much the responsibility of the rancher.
A situation with a potential for conflict, but this picture of an older, freer time will probably be around as long as the money crunch lasts.
It's probably be a perfect description of what a lot of people call God's country. It looks like this is the way it always was, and the way it's always intended to be.
A corner of the American earth. Merely to look at these hills, seasonally green or gold, is a refreshment. And for anyone who will make the effort, they promise the deepest human satisfactions: peace, solitude, and healing.
It's high on a mountain, warm winds are blowing, and where the winds are blowing to, there ain't no way of knowing. The mountain grass is short, it's dry and close to burning, crying out for water.
Performing her special brand of country folk music for audiences nationwide, Kate Wolf derives her lyrics from her association with a very particular place.
Drifting on the wind through the mountains like a river. I never really realized it was happening until I looked back on my work and realized that in almost every song there was some piece of the earth in it or some touchstone for the area that I've come from. The familiarity and the colors and the smells and the dryness of it is very unique, and I really realize what a big part of me it is. It certainly comes out in my writing. All the images that I tend to just use as metaphors and that I relate my feelings to all have to do with this golden rolling landscape of Northern California.
Early morning melody playing in the scenery of my mind. Rainy days and ocean tides through the hills and greenwood sides like a wind chime. Think of you that way a lot, singing to the coffee.
Just growing up with this landscape as part of my vocabulary, and grew up at Tilden Park in my backyard. I always sort of just took it for granted that everybody had a park like this in their backyard. At the end of the day, I'll walk up on the ridge and just lie down in the grass and watch the sky move. Grateful that the sky is blue and that I can see it. Grateful that I live in a place where there are still hills I can walk up on.
I've walked these mountains in the rain. I've learned to love the wind. I've been up before the sunrise to watch the day begin. And I always knew I'd find you, though I never did know how. Like sunshine on a cloudy day, stand before me now. So give yourself to love.
A sense of place gives you a sense of who you are. And a sense of who you are allows you to do your work in the world.
The tears and laughter, and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love.
We all share the land shares us, I'm just grateful that the land is still there to take care of me and the people around me. The land is definitely a place to be soothed and healed.
Grandmother Earth, I cry, give me rest. But take my place with a woman in the West.
This earth has been here so long and has seen so much that it's our greatest ally.
In the black obsidian.
Natural space can function in deep and spiritual ways. Being semi-wild, regional parks are a reminder of the large rhythms of nature, the migrations of birds, the changing lights and weathers of the seasons. Nature moves at its own pace and will not be hurried. It achieves its own checks and balances. It satisfies profound human needs and can be damaged irreparably by our itch to improve or even only enjoy it.
We need constant reminding about how easy it would be without nuclear holocaust to ruin our living space forever.
The last 5 or 6 years, I think, have witnessed a tremendous surge in office and industrial development.
David Dowell is a land use planner and currently teaches at the University of California. He's concerned about land competition on the city's edge. This East Bay Trail, for instance, is in the middle of a growth explosion. 250,000 people use it every year, and such use may be only a beginning.
I think in the Bay Area, what we've seen in the last 20 years has been a land constraint problem, which has driven up the cost of land and directly pushed up the cost of housing. These higher land costs are obviously going to make it more difficult to acquire land for park space. If the park district doesn't expand and grow to accommodate the growth in urban development in the Bay Area, the quality of the East Bay parks will deteriorate.
We could go on with our growth the way we've been going, and in a few more years we could be as densely populated as Japan, and we could go on beyond that. But I don't think that's the good idea. I think people still need space around them, space to walk in, to sit down and to breathe in.
David Brower, one of the great friends of the earth, grew up on the settled edge of the regional parks and has devoted his career to the conservation movement.
A regional park gives a community, a large community, a chance to have nature next door. And when you have nature next door, you know what a place is all about. It is a place with edges. We are essentially edge people. We live at the edge of the forest, the edge of the meadow, the edge of the land and the sea. And when you have a regional park, you have an edge to your city. We have to concentrate more on redeveloping where we were, rather than looking for what some developers like to call raw land, which doesn't exist in my vocabulary. Raw land to put houses on and to pave. We've paved almost enough now.
But it's precisely on the wild edges of our cities where the most land remains. Here along the San Francisco Bay shoreline, construction is relentless and development proposals affect almost every open area. A site for salt evaporation ponds since the 1800s, it represents one of America's most abused environments, its wetlands. The Regional Park District is finding itself caught between strongly conflicting interests.
To me, developers are not the best people. As I've seen them take land that I liked for itself and to change it into something much less important.
I use the term, quote, environmentalist, end quote. And that to me means someone who objects. You can be well motivated and be genuine and really be upset about something and still be wrong.
Developer John Thorpe, assisted by landscape architect Richard Murray, is examining the bay's shoreline as a site for a racetrack and hotel complex. In Thorpe's proposal, this marshy area would be donated to the regional parks, while a nearby inland salt pond site would hold the racetrack.
I think you can do development in a way that compromises between the needs of man and the needs of the environment. This is a very valuable habitat area as compared to the inland area where the racetrack goes. It's more like a desert.
He is environmentally concerned. He wants to help the parks. He doesn't want to provide a project which is not environmentally sound. The district's role is to get as much shoreland as we can, and the idea of donating 500 acres is a plus for the district.
For District Manager Richard Trudeau, the offer of baylands is tempting. But for the shorebirds, there are ominous implications. Defending their interests is a role that America's regional parks are not yet accustomed to. In urban areas, people's demands take priority.
You have a responsibility to protect the wildlife and the bird life. This is something that we haven't done as well on as we might have. You know, you've heard the old slogan, parks are for people, and that really is the district's mission.
We hope to build a racetrack that's different. We hope to build a racetrack that's a total entertainment experience. Of course we're going to make money on it, and I hope to make lots of money. Just to the south of us would be a hotel, and right across from the hotel would be the racetrack.
So we don't have an awful lot.
Most of this, of course, would be covered in a developed state with about 2.5 feet of dirt.
It may not be an appealing area to people, but its value as wildlife habitat is the heart of the issue.
As a matter of habitat, it doesn't serve as habitat to much. It's more like a desert.
But wait a couple of months and stand in precisely the same spot.
You couldn't possibly call this area a wasteland if you visited it during the wet season of the year, which lasts anywhere from 7 to 8 months.
Paul Kelly is with the California Department of Fish and Game. His research brings him to this area every year. As seasonal wetlands along the Pacific Flyway, these ponds are a link in transglobal shorebird migrations.
We've got 4,000 to 6,000 birds out here behind us today, and it's a little early in the year for big numbers. Things are still warming up. Organisms are starting to grow in the water, and within a few weeks, we'll see much larger numbers, upwards of 25,000 birds in one day in our experience. This would be a disastrous location for a racetrack. This project is probably the least sensitive project with respect to the environment that I've ever encountered. I've never seen a project sponsor that's stonewalled the natural resource issues like as in this case. These shorebirds are migratory, and they come from northern latitudes, Alaska, northern Canada, to spend the winter with us.
The city's guests, a few ounces of feathers on a 20,000-mile global tour. A bird could winter in a park. It could not on a racetrack. Barred from its ancient port of entry, it would have nowhere else to go.
They spend the whole winter with us, many of them, and if they can't come to and use these seasonal wetlands, then they would cease to exist. This area will serve as a very important high tide feeding area for shorebirds, which must move between the bay and these non-tidal marshes to fulfill their food requirements. I think the regional parks is the ideal agency to administer marshlands in this portion of the bay. They have the enforcement personnel, the aircraft, the staff to do a very efficient job.
A larger vision is needed. The challenge to the regional parks is to serve wildlife and the environment in order to serve the human. Along with the amazing global journeys of shorebirds are human travels to the wild edges of our cities. One of the grand journeys of our epoch was undertaken by Polish poet Czesław Miłosz.
When I was, I guess, 12, I had an obsession of wilderness. I wanted to change everything into untouched wilderness. I was drawing maps of imaginary countries covered by forest, and the only means of transportation would be canoes. So I had my dream of a virgin land.
The child's idyllic vision of nature was a dream and couldn't last. It would be blasted for Miłosz by war, and with it would go the possibility of innocence. Warsaw, 1939. A ravaged city, a ravaged landscape. Silenced, embittered, and in danger, Miłosz fled the hopeless old to the hopeful new, the far western edge of America.
All my background directed me towards looking for cozy, secure landscape. America for me was a highly romantic country.
But not a fully comforting refuge. In his new surroundings, bay and hills, Miłosz at first saw something untamed and dangerous that threatened to overwhelm him. Dark waves could seem as indifferent to human hope and aspiration as machine guns. Nevertheless, he learned to know this new rough land and found his voice again.
Pure beauty, benediction. You are all I gathered from a life that was bitter and confused, in which I learned about evil, my own and not my own. Wonder kept seizing me, and I recall only wonder.
The words of his maturity ring with a love, delight, and gratitude made all the stronger by his memory of war's brutality.
Here, standing here, above those hills, I have a sort of feeling of gratitude.
In the wild edges of his adopted country, he discovered beauty that revived his capacity for wonder and serenity.
Risings of the sun over endless green, a universe of grasses and flowers opening to the first light. How can laments and curses be turned into hymns? But the lips praised on their own the feet ran. The heart beat strongly, and the tongue proclaimed its adoration.
The regional parks of America lead us backward to the contact with nature that is our birthright, the kind of contact that formed us as a species and that gives us, when we encounter it in our burdened and cluttered present, a satisfaction hard to name, but easy to feel. These are the places where we can best get a sense of ourselves in the larger world, a sense of our relative size and unimportance and living reality. These are places for knowing ourselves as residents of the only world we will ever have.
Funding for Wild Edge was provided by Brooks Matthews Foundation, Wendell, Lawler, Rosen and Black, Kaiser Development Company, Rhodes Jameson, and Blackwell Homes, a partnership.